Welcome to another episode of the Alignment Podcast. Today we have JD Busch here with us, expert in all things franchise. We were talking right before the call started, and he said he's made all of the mistakes out there over the last 30 years, both operating and starting different franchises and being a consultant as well. And now his aim is to just not be the smartest person in any room that he's in and to not be remaking those mistakes all the time. So I'm excited for our conversation here. Thanks for being with us today, JD.
Thank
Well,
you.
to get started off, would love to have you introduce yourself, share kind of where you're from, where you've been, and what you're most excited about right now.
Beautiful. JD Busch, born and raised from Houston, live in Austin, Texas now here for the last 10 years. So born and raised Texan, not necessarily the only Texan here in the Austin market. uh, but no, love it. Got into franchising actually, when I was a senior in college and worked for a gentleman that was my mentor and was like, how would you like to, be and own one of my concepts? And it was a taekwondo, gymnastics. It was a taekwondo, gymnastics, cheerleading, dance, all these different things. And then of course all things, we had a after school program, which was all about kids fitness. So it was called Kid Fit. So yeah, at the ripe age of 21 years old, senior in college, it was like, yeah, just dive straight in. And that's how I got in really my first franchising type of experience and been in franchising ever since.
It's awesome. How has franchising changed since then?
Ooh, I think I changed. Knowing more about it,
You'd hope.
more due diligence, the right ways and wrong ways, to develop and to build franchise systems and, operations. I mean, mainly with the franchise, the main reason why I get somebody in it, the franchise were successful is the franchisees make money. If there's not a roadmap for franchisees to make, money, you ultimately are not going to be successful. That's why you might even know the stats more than me, but it's 97 or 98% of most franchises don't succeed or get past 100 units or something like that is what they say. It's just mainly because they're either bringing the wrong franchisee and or they don't really have a roadmap for success of franchisees when they get in.
Yeah, no, that I can see that. I have a friend who started a company, started a franchise, so offering a bunch, and it was to people, and it was a beast. And I think at the end of the day, the story will be, yeah, they were successful because they'll have survived, but not without a lot of battle wounds and opening up too much in one market and then shutting entirely down and shifting around in the US. And yeah, it's fascinating. It's I think as time evolves, right? Collectively we get smarter at things. The things that work become more mainstream knowledge, but there's an aspect to it that just never gets easier, I think. And that's the people and building teams, because it's easy to read a book, but it's a lot harder to do it in practice. How has your perspective on leading and building the teams within a franchise changed throughout your time? And what do you see the trends with that as you consult other owners as well?
Man, could be all over the place. I guess I would say more on what I think about building a team or the right team, which is very difficult. I see you have that traction in the back, if I can see that far.
Yeah.
Traction
Yep.
book. So making sure you have the right people and the right people in the right seats is
Yep.
extremely important. Somebody can be an extremely hard worker and show up to work every day and work as hard as they can, but they're ultimately not, they're maybe right, there and they're right culture wise, they're just not right for the position they're in to be able to excel or grow, to be able to handle whatever that might be. It's moving into a higher executive position. So I think it's great about following books like Traction, done scaling up obviously as well. But in those books, going through and identifying and having one way that everybody talks, speaks, and it's basically having your own same language, so you're all moving and directing in the same way and doing the same processes on how to reach those issues, like in Traction Rocks and different things that you tackle. How do you tackle them? Who's responsible for them? And what day and time is it due? Like all the things are in there. I think that's where getting everything that's in writing is something that's going to be more achievable. Anything that's not in writing will never happen. That's what they say. Everybody has a timestamp on it. But I think the number one thing that changed the most with me is because everybody can go through Traction, everybody can go through the right place, but you still have to have that culture. Everybody looks at culture as a million different things. some people are like, oh, I have a great culture because X, Y, Z. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're also building a culture and a franchise system. You have to have franchisees that are aligned as well. And if your franchisees, the franchisor aren't aligned, then there's always been problems. There's nothing's ever perfect, for sure. But I know that, you know, I think like every emerging brand, I mean, everyone that ever gets in, they're just excited to sell a franchise. They're excited that somebody wants their business and they sell them, not really understanding or knowing who are we looking for? What is the type of franchisee? What is their culture index? Whatever it might be to make sure that we're in alignment. Do I even understand this person? Is it somebody I can work with? And I think that's what's very difficult with any position is you're trying to find people that are um, right in the way of education or knowledge and aspect, but that aspect of how do they mesh and how they work together with a team and what does that look like and what I want to build is extremely important in any system. So I hope that answered your question. It was way around kind of all of that,
It
but
does. No, you touched on a few things that I think are really important, right? You have making sure that you have the right people in the right seats on the bus. And then which I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff there, but I'm curious because often kind of the franchise aspect is interesting and different because if you're a franchisor and you're bringing on new franchisees, you're not hiring them, but it almost emulates kind of that experience of, hey, you're bringing them on and they're connected at the hip, and they're more invested than a traditional employee. How do you how do you determine if a franchisee is aligned with you culturally?
well, to be honest with you, that was something I changed many years ago and obviously legal aspect or whatever else, but I treat it just like I was hiring an executive team member or somebody that so like say if I was hiring a franchisee, I've been in retail services pretty much my whole life. So if I wouldn't go through the process and hire you to run my own location, why would I bring you in as a franchisee? So that was the number rule that we came into. So we went through the same process as even probably more detailed with understanding their backgrounds, their culture index, and what drives them. Do they have the motivators that would be successful in this business? I've learned that if you're in retail services, membership sales type business, having an introvert, somebody that's non-social, doesn't like to be in front of people or talk or do is not going to be a great franchisee for you. You want to make sure that you have people that have that sales oriented, they're competitive. Like with our culture aspect, we always like to bring in competitive people. We realize that competitive sales minded type people, and when you put out all their numbers, they're usually want to fight to be number one. They're not going, oh, it's somebody else's fault, and I can't go through. I could never obtain that. Like I always want those people that are always going to drive, and I think that's uh, after. And I got extremely lucky to be honest with you. Nothing but luck. Luckily, my first four franchisees were all literally my top franchisees in several different concepts that I had. So yeah, I mean, they end up being all of them having top 5 top locations in the nation and, got very fortunate and realized, okay, how do I get more people like that? Because not everybody behind them were the same way. I said, "Why can't you be like these guys?" And it was that competitive, sales-minded, want to be number 1. So it was really competitive fun that were myself as, the first business I had where I started having franchisees obviously under me was my first 2 franchisees in were all competitive. So we were all competing against each other. So we just had this really fun cultural environment about pushing and driving each other, kind of, you know, um, pushing and poking each other, going, "Oh yeah, look at my sales compared to yours today," or whatever, and it just really helped drive a culture that I learned that you got to bring in more people like that, which is not always easy. And you got to be able to say no to people just to bring in the actual, upfront franchise fee. Your money's made in royalties and made in the growth of the businesses and companies. And that's one thing I learned in a huge way is that's extremely important in your business and your long-term growth of the company.
That's really cool, and I'm glad you were lucky. It seems too like apart from just the competitive nature, that also there is an aspect of looking for long term growth over short term growth that exists, right? Because if you have somebody can be competitive, but if they just care about short term, they're going to do things, you know, take shortcuts, do things that would hinder the team in the long run. Is that something that you've noticed as well as in a good franchisee is the desire to actually grow the brand?
That's another aspect. So one thing that I learned is that, especially with consulting with franchisors and or other business people, even staff and people that I've had with me, there's an aspect of understanding building like in traction is where you get, I'm sure you've been through the whole book, but understanding where some people can't get past today, more or less than what they're going to be doing for the week or month or year. And then I already know where I'm gonna go. Like, this is where I'm gonna be in 5 years. All y'all just gotta be able to figure out and, follow behind. So that was the part for me was, like, getting and having that team of people that understood this is our ultimate long-term goal, and then really building that plan, and traction obviously was a huge aspect of that to where we were building out those daily tasks, those daily items that ultimately was for us to achieve our 3, 5 year, and 10-year objectives. And that was all about growth. It's about driving. Again, if franchisees don't make money, if we're not supporting and or providing I call it this, the roadmap for success going through, if we don't have that buttoned up, which it never ending. It's always being evolved. It's being evolved by franchisees that do it better or whatever it might be. You just had to be open to it. But our whole goal was always about bringing the right people, right culture. It'll naturally grow and build into something amazing and big. Where most franchise, or again, I got lucky and not a good roadmap for success is buying out franchisees that you should have not brought in the first place. I would not put that into your models like, oh, we'll see if they work out. And if they don't, I'll just buy them out. So I don't recommend that either. I realized that was not a good roadmap for me to go back and buy out people because I wanted to give them or be in the business, even though they might not have been a right fit. And that's where I kind of got into the fact of, do they meet our cultural background? Will they be a fit with our franchisees and everything that's in there? And it's harder, obviously, because it's hard with everybody trying to, whatever, you're trying to sell XYZ business. Everybody's trying to go and get that best franchisee. So it's, I think, extremely important to stick to that. And it's hard sometimes because you do want them. You're have somebody that wants to buy your business and you're basically telling them, no, we don't think you're a good cultural fit. And that's kind of hard sometimes for the team. And people are like, but I really like them. I think we can mold them. It's like most people either have it or they don't. And yes, people can change. They can change their ways, but usually if they're way D and we're looking for way A, then it's not usually going to happen. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fascinating. How do you help your franchisees, and it probably also is similar in your consulting. How do you help them then turn and do the same thing when they're hiring? Ensure that the people, the people they're hiring to work actually align with what they're trying to build and align with the way that they operate, right? Their culture.
Well, that's where it gets down into individual locations for success, and then having that, it's um, really been difficult. I think more so in today because of the legal aspects that have come around with the way of hiring in general. Should just say that attorneys tell franchisors do not go through and help in any way with the hiring process. So, I mean, that's the
Fascinating.
yeah, I don't know if you knew that. So yeah, the
No, I
laws,
didn't.
just like with the joint employer, this fight that's been going on for 10 years. Um, obviously that IFA has been hugely in and involved with, but well, I don't want to say this. So yes, I don't, it doesn't matter either way. Either way, I feel like you have to have a way or aspect to be able to help say this is who you're looking for and more than a job description and everything across the board, like, the mold that they're trying to fit. So we do put in those processes. I should say best practices is what we do. On the employer side, anytime you mandate or say you have to use what we have in place, it just puts you in more liability, which is so horrible because your whole business is about the people you bring in, the people that uh, how you hire them, how do you identify? Because there's no crystal ball to be able to hire. I mean, I think everybody's been like, oh, I checked all the boxes, the culture stuff all came back, and it just wasn't a good fit for whatever reason. So it's always difficult no matter what, but I feel that we just put in as much tools as we can because we realize that even myself, people like to hire who they like and that are like their personality instead of who's right for them. That's part of traction too. You're hiring the person that's the best for this seat, not because you could be friends with them and go have a drink afterward. So that's, the main thing that most people do is they hire people they like instead of the right person for the job. And so we try to train and do as much as possible, even though legally that says we're not to. And that's a major problem, I think, in the franchising world right now. And I think it puts, I mean, it's just my personal opinion. I think it's very difficult to go build franchises when you're told you can't, do anything with helping with how do you manage and bring up staff and people. I mean, that's the main reason for me you'd want to buy into a franchise is so I don't have to learn to do all these other aspects. That makes sense. You never heard that before? You
Interesting.
never heard people go
No, I hadn't.
on the franchise?
But if yeah, so that's fascinating. So if I went and bought a massive franchise near me, Crumble, right? Crumble's been blowing up. I don't know if you have any Crumbles in Austin.
Yeah, down the street.
The cookie stuff. I didn't realize. So if I go and buy a Crumble franchise, Crumble can't tell me how to hire people, how to build my team. They can't help me with any of that.
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I think that probably the people that are doing well, I mean, there has to be that operational aspect down to it. And then there's some that where the attorneys, are telling them that, you know, there's too much liability to do it all. So I think that's the big thing is there's people that are still doing it no matter what. And I should say, yeah, I mean, it's liability. I'll say, I mean, we put together full programs and lawyers to say, don't do that. You can't be involved. You can't, train
Yeah,
them, coach them on hiring practices, but we do that. I think it's a key to why somebody gets in franchising. I mean, you want to know how do you ultimately build that culture. And I think that's the big difference between top operators and not. They might not have the experience, or they do have the experience to hire the right people, train them properly, do all those things. You can't just, too many people are like, I need somebody because I can't work Saturdays and they can work Saturdays. And so
yeah,
100% should not be somebody you put in place. Then they don't train them and just throw them in the fire. I think that having a process and trying to make sure that you're being in front of all those things are extremely important. And doing your best to hire, train, and develop your team of people. Because we put together for franchisees, especially, which was something I never had, was how to develop from people from being single unit to multi-unit franchisees. And we did culture indexes and um, what is it called? I don't know if they had to change their name, but Oracle profiles or Zoracle now. It's called Zoracle because Oracle came after me. But Zoracle profiles, which is 100% for personality profiles for franchisees. And it lets you know if they're an area developer,
that's
multi-unit,
cool.
multi-unit, mindset or single unit. So it actually has aspect where it goes through and lets you know that they're what their mindset is, what their culture aspect is, but their mindset is they can't get past one store. Like, it's put them in that box going, yeah, this isn't the right seat for somebody to buy 3 locations because they don't have the withal to be able to go through and be a multi-unit owner. So that was a really great deal that we used for franchisees because we always wanted multi-unit franchisees. And then we also wanted to build programs to help develop multi-unit like how do you develop your team of people to then get your second location and so on. So we put together programs that were so much easier to build within, like in yours. So your manager or your manager's job was to hire their person to take them out. So our whole thing with our own locations was you can't move up in the company until you hire somebody and train them that's better than you in your position. And that was a huge problem for a lot of people, which we knew them weren't the right managers. They're like, what? Like, well, if I train somebody that, and hire somebody that's better than me, you could just fire me. I'm like, no, that's not what it's about. You can handle and understand, like it took me to hire people smarter and better than you, train them and go through. So then when they take over your location and move into area manager or whatever it might be, that they're actually taking over and doing a better job and running the business. Nothing ever changed when you left. And that's really what your job is to cultivate and find the right people and right talent. So that was a big piece of how we trained and developed growing systems. And if you did it right, it was beautiful. But if it wasn't, it's not. You don't hire the right people and you don't have the right
Yeah,
man. There's that bottleneck where you don't have anybody to move up in the company because they're not right for the position more or less than, even training people to take over their position basically. So we kind of built a whole development program, if that makes sense. And we did that for
yeah. I
franchisees.
mean, I think when you boil it down, yeah, when you boil it down, that that's really just good leadership. How do you help people to grow bigger than they would have and to operate from a space where you're not afraid that somebody's going to come take your job, but really you're trying to help other people develop so you can all grow together.
And that was a big change because same thing in franchising. How you approach things has to be completely different. So nobody likes change, but you have to have a process with this is why and this is the testing we did. And, there's you basically have to present and win people over with that, with that aspect. So with development and the way that we approach that too is we don't hire like that was a big thing too. We didn't hire short-term people because hiring people to be able to learn the systems and processes and all that took so much time. So the entry level person, we always hired them being that one day they would be the manager. If that makes sense. Like we only hired people because we know that
Potent-
they'd be able the company with the potential. And if you that's where it starts. If the managers didn't hire those people that first come in, the associates, whatever, the lowest sales position that you start at or whatever position it might be, if you don't hire somebody there that you see can move up in the company, it all starts breaking because you have nobody
That's
that
awesome.
keeps going until you're now hiring outside to open a new location. That's always it's when I grew right, and again was not always right. I made all those mistakes, but when we learned and it was done, when you had the manager again, so when you had the great manager that understood it and trained up people, that was like a cultivating arm or that manager could just keep moving up people through the company. And it was so much easier way to open new stores and do that because they're opening running, not learning how to do everything. I mean, it's just opening a new store and going through the same processes and doing it at a high level.
Yeah. I mean, when people are aligned around what you're actually trying to do, it's magic.
Yes.
And yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, JD. This has been really fun. I'm excited for what you're doing, and I'm excited for all the people that you're working with, so that they can, kind of take the shortcut on a lot of these learnings. If people want to learn more about what you're doing, where's the best place to find you?
Obviously, JD Busch, Busch, like the beer, not the president, at bushglobal.com, or you can call me directly on my cell at,
Thanks so much for coming on today.
hey, thank you, Jacob. Appreciate it.